lasting record of his cruelty. A vile action is recorded of a Spaniard, whose name, which deserves to be branded with infamy, escapes me at this moment. The soldiers of Morelos having come in search of him, he standing at his door, pointed out his brother, who was in a room inside the house, as the person whom they sought, and escaped himself, leaving his brother to be massacred in his place. We contrasted the conduct of this miserable wretch with the noble action of the Prince de Polignac, under similar circumstances. At half past 10, after a pleasant ride of about 5 leagues, we arrived at the natural hot springs of Cuincho. The place is quite wild, the scenery very striking. The building consists of 2 very large baths, 2 very damp rooms, and a kitchen. The baths are kept by a very infirm old man, a martyr to intermitting fever, and 2 remarkably handsome girls, his daughters, who live here completely alone, and, except in summer, when the baths are resorted to by a number of canonijos and occasional gentlemen from Morelia, waste their sweetness on the desert air. The house, such as it is, lies at the foot of rocky hills, covered with shrubs, and pouring down streams of hot water from their volcanic bosoms. All the streams that cross your path are warm. You step by chance into a little streamlet, and find the water of a most agreeable temperature. They put this water in earthen jars to cool, in order to render it fit for drinking, but it never becomes fresh and cold. It contains muriatic acid, without any trace of sulphur or metallic salt. I think it is Humboldt who supposes that in this part of Mexico there exists, at a great depth in the interior of the earth, a fissure, running from east to west for 137 leagues, through which, bursting the external crust of the porphyritic rocks, the volcanic fire has opened itself a passage at different times, from the coasts of the Mexican Gulf as far as the South Sea. The famous volcano of Jorullo is in this department, and boiling fountains are common in various parts of it. We stopped here to take a bath, and found the temperature of the water delicious, about the ordinary temperature of the human body. The baths are rather dark, being enclosed in great stone walls, with the light coming from a very small aperture near the roof. A bird that looked like a wild duck was sailing about in the largest one, having made its entry along with the water when it was let in. I never bathed in any water which I so much regretted leaving. After bathing, we waited for the arrival of our mules, which were to follow us at a gentle pace, that we might have breakfast and continue our journey to Pascuaro, a city 9 leagues farther. But several hours passed away, and no mules appeared, and at length we came to the grievous conviction that the arrieros had mistaken the road, and that we must expect neither food nor beds that night, for it was now too late to think of reaching Pascuaro. In this extremity, the gentlemen from Morelia, suffering for their politeness in having escorted us, the 2 damsels of the bath, naiads of the boiling spring, pitying our hungry condition, came to offer their services. One asked me if I should like to eat a burro in the meantime. A burro being an ass, I was rather startled at the proposition, and assured her that I should infinitely prefer waiting a little longer before resorting to so desperate a measure. Some people call them pecadoras, female sinners, said her sister. Upon this the gentlemen came to our assistance, and burros or pecadoras were ordered forthwith. They proved to be hot tortillas, with cheese in them, and we found them particularly good. It grew late, but no mules arrived, and at length the young ladies and their father rushed out desperately, caught an old hen that was wandering amongst the hills, killed, skinned, and put it into a pot to boil, baked some fresh tortillas, and brought us the spoil in triumph. 1 penknife was produced, the boiling pan placed on a deal table in the room of the bath, and every one surrounding the fowl, a tough old creature who must have chuckled through many revolutions. We ate by turns, and concluded with a comfortable drink of lukewarm water. We then tried to beguile the time by climbing amongst the hills at the back of the house, by pushing our way through the tangled briars, by walking to a little lake where there were ducks and waterfowl, and close to the margin a number of fruit trees. We returned to the baths. The mules had not been heard of. There was no resource but patience. Our Morelian friends left us to return home before it should grow dusk, and shortly after, an escort of 23 lancers, with a captain, arrived by orders of the governor, Don Panfilo Galiudo, to accompany us during the remainder of our journey. They looked very picturesque with their lances and little scarlet flags, and gave a very formidable aspect to the little portico in front of the baths, where they deposited all their military accoutrements, their saddles, guns, sarapes, etc. The captain had with him his wife and daughter, and a baby of about 2 years old, which, during all the time they were with us, was constantly carried by one of the soldiers with the utmost care, in front of his horse. Meanwhile the moon rose, and we walked about disconsolate in front of the baths, fearing greatly that some accident might have overtaken our unescorted mules and servants, that the first might be robbed, and that the drivers might be killed. But it was as well to try to sleep, if it were only to get over the interminable night, and at length some clean straw was procured and spread in a corner of the damp floor. There K and I lay down in our mangas. C n procured another corner, Colonel Y a third, and then and thus we addressed ourselves seriously to repose, but in vain. Between cold and mosquitoes and other animals we could not close our eyes, and were thankful to rise betimes, shake the straw off, and resume our march. The road was pretty and flowery when the light came in, and we gradually began to open our eyes after taking leave of our fair hostesses and their father. When I say the road, you do not, I trust, imagine us riding along a dusty highway. I am happy to say that we are generally the discoverers of our own pathways, every man his own Columbus. Sometimes we take short cuts which prove to be long rounds, over hill, over dale, through bush, through briar, through valley and over stream, and this kind of journey has something in it so independent and amusing, that with all its fatigues and inconveniences, we find it delightful, far preferable even to travelling in the most commodious London-built carriage, bowling along the Queen's Highway with 4 swift posters, at the rate of 12 miles an hour. Arrived at the huts, we stopped to make inquiries concerning the mules. 2 loaded mules, the peasants said, had been robbed in the night, and the men tied to a tree on the low road leading to Pascuaro. We rode on, uneasy enough, and at another hut were told that many robbers had been out in the night, and that amongst others a woman had been robbed and bound hand and foot. The road now became bleak and uninteresting, the sun furiously hot, and we rode forward with various misgivings as to the fate of the party, when, at a cluster of huts called El Corrio, we came up with the whole concern. The arrieros had forgotten the name of Quincho, and not knowing where to go, had stopped here the previous night, knowing that we were bound for Pascuaro and must pass that way. They had arrived early and missed the robbers. We stopped to breakfast at some huts called La Puerta de Chapultepec, where we got some tortillas from a half caste Indian, who was in great distress because his wife had run off from him for the 4th time with another gentleman. He vowed that though he had taken her back 3 times, he never would receive her more. Yet I venture to say that when the false fair one presents herself, she will find him placable. He is evidently in such distress at having no woman to take care of his house. After leaving Chapultepec, the scenery improves, and at length we had a beautiful view of the hills, at the foot of which lies the ancient city of Tzintzontzan, close by the opposite shore of the lake of Pascuaro, formerly capital of the independent kingdoms of Michoacán, an important city called at the time of Cortes Hurtzitzila. It was formerly the residence of the monarch king Calzonsi, an ally of Cortes, and who, with his Indian subjects, assisted him in his Mexican war. It is now a poor Indian village, though it is said that some remains of the monarch's palace still exist. Apropos to which, we have several times observed, since we entered this state, large stones lying in fields or employed in fences, with strange hieroglyphic characters engraved on them, some of which may be curious and interesting. The view as we approach Pascuaro, with its beautiful lakes studded with little islands, is very fine. The bells are tolling, and they were letting off rockets for some Indian festival, and we met parties of the natives, who had been keeping the festival